The room went silent the moment the security guards pushed the glass doors open. Every head in the massive boardroom of Hawthorne Global Industries turned toward the entrance. Polished shoes paused mid-step. Expensive pens froze above tablets. A dozen white millionaires, board members in tailored suits worth more than some people's houses, stared in disbelief. Standing at the door was a small black boy. He looked no older than 12. His skin was deep brown, his hair tightly coiled and uneven like it hadn't seen a comb in days. His oversized brown hoodie was faded, the sleeves too long, the hem frayed. His sneakers were dusty, soles peeling slightly at the sides. In his right hand, he clutched a dirty, worn-out canvas bag, stained and sagging as if it carried everything he owned in the world. And yet his back was straight, his chin was lifted. "I am here for the board meeting," the boy said clearly. A ripple of laughter moved through the room, soft at first, then louder. One man scoffed openly, another shook his head in amusement. "This is a restricted floor," snapped Charles Whitmore, the silver-haired interim chairman. "Security, why is this child in here?" The guards hesitated. "Sir," he insisted, he said. "I said," the boy interrupted, his voice calm but firm, "that I am Elijah Carter, and I am the rightful heir to this company." The laughter exploded. One woman nearly choked on her water, another leaned back in her chair, clapping sarcastically. A man with a thick British accent muttered, "This must be some kind of joke." Charles stood slowly, adjusting his cufflinks. "Listen, boy," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is Hawthorne Global, a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You don't just walk in here with a dirty bag and make claims like that." Elijah didn't flinch. "My father founded this company." "That did it." The laughter turned cruel. "Founder," someone repeated. "Do you know how many lawyers would have to be involved if that were true?" A tall board member leaned forward. "What did you say your name was again?" "Elijah Carter." The room went quiet for a split second, just long enough for something unseen to shift. Then Charles laughed again, louder than before. "The founder's last name was Carter, yes, but that doesn't mean anything. Anyone can read a Wikipedia page." Elijah tightened his grip on the bag. "My father was Marcus Carter." A few smiles faded. Marcus Carter was not just a name, he was a legend. A self-made black billionaire who had built Hawthorne Global from a garage operation into a global empire before dying suddenly 2 years earlier. "No," Charles said sharply, "Marcus Carter had no acknowledged son." Elijah's eyes lifted, steady and unblinking. "That's because you made sure no one acknowledged me." The air felt heavier. A woman at the far end of the table frowned. "This is inappropriate," she said. "Security, remove him." The guard stepped forward. Before they could touch him, Elijah reached into the dirty bag. Several board members recoiled instinctively. He pulled out a thick, worn envelope, edges yellowed with age, stamped with the Hawthorne Global legal seal. "I was told," Elijah said quietly, "that if anything ever happened to my father I should bring this here, on the day the board votes to finalize the transfer of his shares." Charles froze. The vote was scheduled for today. "You stole that," Charles said, his voice tight. Elijah shook his head. "My father gave it to me." "That's impossible," another man snapped. "We handled all his affairs." "Did you?" Elijah asked. A murmur spread around the table. For the first time no one laughed. Charles cleared his throat. "This meeting will not be disrupted by some street kid playing pretend," he said, though his confidence was cracking. "Security." "Open it," Elijah said. The room held its breath. Charles hesitated, then looked to the company's head legal counsel, a woman named Denise Holloway. She had been silent until now, her eyes fixed on the envelope. "That seal," Denise said slowly, "is real." Charles shot her a warning look. "Denise." "And that envelope," she continued, "is registered in our internal archive. It was never submitted." The blood drained from Charles's face. Denise stood up. Security stepped back. The guards obeyed. She walked toward Elijah, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. "May I see it?" Elijah handed her the envelope without hesitation. She examined it carefully, then turned to the board. "This document can only be opened in the presence of the board and recorded into the minutes." A man slammed his palm on the table. "This is madness." Denise met his gaze, then let the document prove it. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Denise opened the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Her lips parted slightly. She looked up slowly, and for the first time her professional composure cracked. "This," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "is a sealed succession declaration, signed by Marcus Carter, notarized, witnessed." Charles staggered back into his chair. "That's not possible," he muttered. Denise turned the document around so the board could see. "At the time of his death," she continued, "Marcus Carter owned 71% of Hawthorne Global. According to this declaration, those shares transfer in full to his biological son." Every eye locked onto Elijah. "Who is," Denise said, swallowing hard, "Elijah Carter?" Several board members went pale. The laughter from minutes ago felt like a cruel memory. But before anyone could speak, the doors burst open again. A man in a dark suit rushed in, breathless. "Stop the confirmation vote," he shouted. Charles snapped his head up. "What now?" The man looked straight at Elijah, then back at the board. "The DNA results just came in," he said, "and they change everything." Elijah stood silently in the center of the room, his dirty bag at his feet, as the most powerful people in the company realized this meeting was about to destroy everything they thought they controlled. The man's words hung in the air like smoke. The DNA results just came in. Every board member shifted in their seat. Some leaned forward, others leaned back as if distance could protect them from what was coming. Charles Whitmore's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. "DNA?" one of the men asked sharply. "What DNA?" The messenger swallowed. "The sample taken from the founder's private medical archive, and the sample provided earlier this morning." All eyes snapped back to Elijah. The boy did not move, he did not smile, he did not look afraid. He simply stood there, quiet, like someone who had already lived through storms worse than this room could offer. "This is absurd," Charles said, forcing his voice to steady. "Why would anyone run DNA tests without board approval?" Denise Holloway closed the document folder and turned slowly. "Because Marcus Carter authorized it," she said, 2 years ago in case of exactly this situation." A heavy silence followed. Denise continued, "He instructed that if any dispute arose over his succession, the results would be released immediately after a sealed declaration was presented." Charles's face hardened. "And you knew about this?" "I knew it existed," Denise replied calmly. "I did not know the identity of the child." The messenger cleared his throat. "The results confirm a 99.9% biological match." A woman at the table whispered, "Oh my God." Another man pushed his chair back slightly, eyes wide. "So he really is." "Elijah Carter," Denise finished, her voice firm, "the biological son of Marcus Carter." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, questions flew, accusations bounced off the marble walls. "This can't be happening. We were told Marcus had no family. Who hid this child?" Charles slammed his palm on the table. "Enough." The noise died down, but the tension remained thick and electric. Charles stood, straightening his suit like armor. "Even if this is true," he said coldly, "this boy cannot run a global corporation. He's a child. He looks like he just walked off the street." A few heads nodded in agreement. Elijah finally spoke. "My father never said I would run it today," he said quietly. "He said I would own it." Charles scoffed. "Ownership comes with responsibility, experience, education." Elijah met his gaze. "I have been learning since I could read." That earned another wave of laughter, though it was thinner now, edged with discomfort. Denise raised a hand. "Marcus Carter anticipated this objection," she said. "The declaration includes a guardianship and advisory clause. Until Elijah reaches legal age, control is overseen by a trustee board appointed by Marcus himself." Charles stiffened. "That board no longer exists." Denise turned another page. "It does, and it was never dissolved." She read aloud the names. With each one, more color drained from Charles's face. Several of the men named were no longer in the room. They had resigned quietly months earlier, others had died, and one. Denise looked up. "One seat remains vacant by design." "For who?" someone asked. "For Elijah," she said. The room spun into chaos again. "This is a takeover. This is a setup." Charles pointed at Elijah, his composure finally cracking. You think showing up dressed like that makes you some kind of symbol? You expect us to hand over billions because of a piece of paper and a test. Elijah did not raise his voice. No, I expect you to do what my father planned. Charles laughed bitterly. Your father abandoned you. The words hit like a slap. Elijah's jaw tightened. You don't know anything about my father, he said, his voice low but steady. You only knew the man he let you see. For a moment something uncomfortable passed through the room, guilt or fear. Denise stepped closer to Elijah. Where have you been living all this time? She asked gently. In Southside, Elijah replied, with my grandmother until she died. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. My father visited, Elijah continued. Always quietly, always alone. He said the world wasn't ready for me and neither were the people closest to him. Charles snapped, convenient story. Elijah reached into his bag again. This time no one laughed. He pulled out a small, cracked phone. He tapped the screen and placed it on the table. A video began to play. Marcus Carter's face filled the screen, older, tired, but unmistakable. If you're watching this, Marcus said, then I'm gone, and my son is standing in front of people who never wanted him here. The room froze. Marcus's voice continued, calm and deliberate. Elijah, if they doubt you, remember this, you were never meant to fit into their world, you were meant to change it. The video ended. Silence swallowed the boardroom whole. Charles sank slowly back into his chair. Denise straightened. The confirmation process is complete, she said. According to company law, Elijah Carter is hereby recognized as the primary shareholder and heir of Hawthorne Global Industries. Some board members looked stunned, others looked afraid. Elijah picked up his bag. But just as Denise reached for the gavel to make it official, one of the men at the table leaned forward, his voice sharp and calculating. Recognition is one thing, he said, but survival is another. Do you have any idea what kind of enemies your father made? Elijah met his eyes. I know, he said, I've been running from them my whole life. The man's expression darkened. Then you should also know, he said slowly, that some of us are not finished fighting. The boardroom lights flickered briefly. And for the first time since he walked in, Elijah felt it. The danger was only just beginning. The boardroom meeting ended without applause, without celebration, and without peace. By the time Elijah Carter was escorted out of the room, the men and women who had mocked him earlier no longer laughed. They watched him with narrowed eyes as if he were no longer a boy but a problem that refused to disappear. Outside the glass walls of Hawthorne Global, the city buzzed like nothing had changed. Cars moved, people hurried. Somewhere, money exchanged hands without anyone knowing that one of the largest companies in the world had just shifted forever. Elijah walked beside Denise Holloway down a quiet hallway. The sound of his worn sneakers echoed against polished floors. You did well in there, Denise said carefully. Elijah nodded. I didn't do anything, I just told the truth. Denise stopped walking. She looked down at him, studying his face more closely now, his calm eyes, the quiet strength that didn't belong to a child who had lived an easy life. You understand, she said, that this changes everything. People will come for you. They already have, Elijah replied. Denise frowned. What do you mean? Elijah adjusted the strap of his dirty bag. The night my grandmother died, our house was broken into. They didn't take anything valuable. They were looking for documents. Denise's expression hardened. Did they find them? Elijah shook his head. She hid them, taught me how. Denise exhaled slowly. Marcus Carter trusted you for a reason. Before Elijah could respond, a group of executives rounded the corner. They stopped abruptly when they saw him. No one spoke at first. Finally, one man cleared his throat. Congratulations, he said stiffly, I suppose. Elijah looked at him. Thank you. The man hesitated. You should understand, some people believe this company belongs to them. They've been planning the future for a long time. Elijah tilted his head slightly. So did my father. The executives exchanged looks and walked away without another word. Denise watched them go. You see, she said quietly, they are already choosing sides. They continued down the hallway until they reached a private office. Inside, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Denise closed the door behind them. "There's something else you need to know," she said. Elijah sat in a leather chair that felt far too soft for him. "Tell me." Denise leaned against the desk. Charles Whitmore wasn't just an interim chairman, he was positioning himself to take permanent control. Today's vote would have sealed it. Elijah looked out the window. That's why he was so angry. "Yes," Denise said, "and Charles doesn't lose quietly." As if summoned by her words, a loud knock hit the door. Denise stiffened. "Stay here," she told Elijah. She opened the door just enough for Charles Whitmore to step inside. His face was tight, his polite mask completely gone. "You think you've won," Charles said, eyes locked on Elijah. Denise snapped, "This conversation is over, Charles." Charles ignored her. "That boy doesn't belong here, you know it." "I know it, the board knows it." Elijah stood up slowly. "My father belonged here." Charles laughed bitterly. "Your father was a mistake. This company survived despite. We made it profitable, we made it clean, and now you show up looking like—" He gestured dismissively at Elijah's clothes. "That." Elijah met his gaze. "You mean honest." The word hit harder than any insult. Charles stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me, boy, you can take a settlement, walk away with more money than you've ever dreamed of, or you can stay and get crushed." Denise moved between them. "That is a threat." Charles smirked. "It's advice." Elijah didn't hesitate. "My father never ran." Charles studied him for a long moment, then his smile faded. "Then you won't either," he said quietly. "Good, that makes this more interesting." He turned and left the room. The door closed. Silence returned. Denise let out a slow breath. "You see now why your father kept you hidden." Elijah nodded. "He wanted me to grow strong before I stepped into this." Denise reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim folder. "These are the next steps: security arrangements, legal protections, a public announcement." Elijah looked at the folder but didn't touch it. "Before all that," he said, "I want to see something." "What?" "My father's office." Denise hesitated, then nodded. "Come with me." They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened, Elijah stepped into a space frozen in time. The desk was spotless. The bookshelves were full. A single framed photo sat on the desk. Marcus Carter stood beside a much younger Elijah, both smiling. Elijah picked up the frame. "He believed in you," Denise said softly. Elijah set it back down. "Then I won't let them erase him." Behind them, unseen by either of them, a security camera light blinked red. And somewhere else in the building, a phone buzzed with a message sent to a private number. "He's staying, proceed with phase 2. The game had begun. Before the next chapter unfolds, this is a good moment to pause and hear from you. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves powerful stories like this. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And one more question: what would you have done if you were Elijah standing alone in that boardroom? Share your thoughts below. Night fell over the city like a warning. From the top floor of Hawthorne Global, the lights looked beautiful, thousands of tiny stars spread across concrete and glass. Elijah stood by the window of Marcus Carter's old office, his reflection faint in the glass. The building felt different now, quieter, watchful. Denise Holloway stood behind him, scrolling through messages on her phone. "The press hasn't gotten the story yet," she said. "That won't last. Once it breaks, everyone will have an opinion about you." Elijah nodded. "They already do." Denise looked up. "How do you mean?" "They judged me the moment I walked in," he said. "Before I spoke, before they knew anything." Denise didn't argue, she had seen it herself. A knock came at the door. Denise turned sharply. "Who is it?" "Security," a voice answered. "Routine sweep." Denise hesitated, then opened the door. Two guards stood outside, faces neutral. "All clear on your floor," one said, "but we recommend relocating the boy tonight." Elijah stiffened. "Why?" The guard exchanged a glance with his partner. "We intercepted an unauthorized access attempt on the West Wing cameras." Denise's jaw tightened. "Was it Charles?" "We can't confirm," the guard said, "but it was internal." Elijah picked up his bag. "Then we should go." Denise nodded, agreed. They moved quickly through the corridors, taking a private elevator down to the underground garage. A black SUV waited with its engine running. As Elijah climbed into the back seat, a strange feeling crawled up his spine, the sense of being watched. The car pulled out into traffic. For several minutes no one spoke, the city lights blurred past the windows. Then the driver said quietly, "We're being followed." Denise's head snapped up, "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am." Elijah leaned forward, "Is that unusual?" Denise didn't answer right away, she watched the side mirror carefully. It shouldn't be happening this soon. The driver took a sharp turn, the car behind them followed. Another turn, still there. The driver cursed under his breath, "They're not hiding it anymore." Denise reached for her phone, "I'm calling it in." Before she could finish dialing, a loud bang echoed behind them. The SUV swerved. "Stay down," the driver shouted. Elijah ducked instinctively as another bang hit, metal scraping metal. "They're trying to force us off the road," Denise said, panic slipping into her voice. The driver accelerated, weaving through traffic, horns blared, a truck slammed its brakes to avoid collision. Elijah's heart pounded but his face stayed calm. He had felt fear like this before, running through dark streets with his grandmother, hiding when footsteps came too close. The SUV shot down a side street. Suddenly, the pursuing car surged forward and rammed them again. Glass shattered. The SUV spun and crashed into a barrier, coming to a violent stop. For a second, everything went silent. "Elijah," Denise gasped, "are you hurt?" He shook his head, ears ringing, "No." The driver groaned, "They're getting out." Denise looked back at Elijah, "Listen to me, if anything happens you run, do you understand?" Elijah's eyes widened, "I'm not leaving you." "You have to," she said urgently. "Your father didn't protect you all these years for nothing." Before Elijah could respond, the doors of the pursuing car opened. Two men stepped out, both wore dark jackets, both moved with purpose. One raised something in his hand. "Gun," the driver whispered. Denise shoved the door open, "Go now." Elijah hesitated for half a second, then grabbed his bag and ran. He sprinted into the darkness, cutting between buildings, his breath burning his chest. Behind him, voices shouted, footsteps followed. "Elijah!" Denise screamed from somewhere behind. He turned a corner and ducked into an alley, pressing himself against a dumpster. His hands shook as he covered his mouth, forcing himself to stay quiet. Footsteps passed close by. A voice hissed, "He can't be far." Elijah closed his eyes. This was why his father had kept him hidden, this was the cost of power. The footsteps moved away. After what felt like forever, silence returned. Elijah slid down against the wall, breathing hard. He didn't know how long he stayed there before a familiar voice whispered, "Elijah." He looked up. Denise stood a few feet away, her suit torn, a small cut on her forehead. Relief flooded her face when she saw him. "They didn't follow me," she said quietly. "We have to move now." They didn't go back to the car. Instead, Denise led Elijah through back streets and side entrances until they reached an old brick building with no sign outside. She knocked in a specific rhythm. The door opened just enough for someone to peer out. "Code?" a deep voice asked. "Carter Legacy," Denise replied. The door opened. Inside, a tall black man with gray at his temples studied Elijah closely. "So this is him," the man said, "Marcus's boy." "Yes," Denise said, "we need protection." The man nodded, "You came to the right place." They moved inside, the door shut and locked behind them. Elijah looked around. The place didn't look like much, plain furniture, quiet halls, but it felt safe in a way the glass towers never had. "Who are you?" Elijah asked. The man smiled faintly, "Someone your father trusted when he trusted very few." Denise placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. "Elijah," she said softly, "this isn't just about a company anymore. Someone tried to kill you tonight." Elijah swallowed. The man's smile faded. "Which means," he said, "the fight has officially begun." And far across the city, in a dark room lit only by a desk lamp, Charles Whitmore listened as a voice on the phone spoke quietly. "He escaped." Charles closed his eyes, jaw tightening. Then he said coldly, "We stopped pretending." Morning arrived without comfort. Elijah woke on a narrow bed in a room that smelled faintly of soap and old wood. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then the sound of distant traffic, the echo of running footsteps from the night before, and the image of Denise bleeding in the alley rushed back to him all at once. He sat up quickly. The door opened almost immediately, as if someone had been waiting. Denise stepped in, her forehead bandaged, her suit replaced with simple dark clothes. She looked tired but alert. "You're safe," she said before he could ask. Elijah nodded slowly. "Where are we?" "A secure property," Denise replied. "Off the books, your father used it when things got dangerous." Elijah absorbed that quietly, so this isn't the first time. Denise didn't deny it. Marcus Carter didn't become who he was without making enemies. They walked down the hallway into a modest kitchen area. The tall black man from the night before sat at a table sipping coffee. He looked up as Elijah entered. "Morning, young man," he said. "Name, Raymond Cole." Elijah shook his hand. "Elijah." Raymond smiled faintly. "You remind me of your father, same eyes, same calm when everything's on fire." Elijah looked down. "People keep saying that." Raymond leaned back. "That calm saved his life more than once." Denise sat across from Raymond. "We need to talk about next steps." Raymond nodded. "We already are. My team swept the building overnight. No trackers on the kid, no digital leaks so far." "So they don't know where we are," Denise said. "Not yet," Raymond replied, "but they'll try to flush you out another way." Elijah frowned. "How?" Raymond folded his hands. "By attacking what you care about." Elijah's chest tightened. "I don't have anything left." Raymond studied him carefully. "You have your father's name and now his company." Denise added, "The board reconvenes in 48 hours. Public confirmation, media, lawyers, everything your enemies don't want." Elijah looked up. "So they'll stop it?" "They'll try," Denise said, "legally if they can, illegally if they must." Raymond stood, "Which is why we prepare." The next 2 days passed in a strange rhythm. Security drills, legal briefings, quiet meals, long conversations about a man Elijah barely knew outside of stolen moments and whispered promises. Denise showed Elijah old files Marcus had left behind, letters, plans, notes written in careful handwriting. "He always intended for you to stand where you are now," Denise said one night, "even if he wasn't there to see it." Elijah traced his finger over one of the letters. "Why didn't he tell the world?" Denise hesitated. "Because the world would have come for you sooner." Raymond entered the room, his face serious. "We have a problem." Denise stood immediately. "What kind?" "The board," Raymond said. "Charles Whitmore filed an emergency injunction this morning." Elijah's heart dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means," Denise said carefully, "he's trying to freeze your father's shares before the confirmation becomes public." Elijah clenched his fists. "Can he do that?" Raymond shook his head. "Not legally, but he can delay, cause doubt, buy time." "And time is dangerous," Denise said. Raymond nodded, "which brings us to the real issue." He turned on a screen mounted on the wall. Footage appeared, grainy security video from inside Hawthorne Global. Elijah watched as men he recognized from the boardroom moved through corridors late at night. One of them stopped outside Marcus Carter's old office. Another pulled out a keycard. "They're back in the building," Denise whispered. Raymond zoomed in on the footage. "They're looking for something." Elijah's stomach sank. The original declaration. Denise's face went pale. "If they destroy it." "They can't erase the truth," Elijah said. "No," Raymond replied, "but they can muddy it enough to sway courts and investors." Elijah stared at the screen, his reflection overlapping with the shadows of the men breaking into his father's office. "Then we don't wait," he said suddenly. Denise looked at him. "What do you mean?" Elijah turned to them, his voice steady. "My father didn't plan for me to hide forever." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking of going public now?" "Yes," Elijah said, "before they control the story." Denise hesitated. "That's risky." "So is staying silent," Elijah replied. "They already tried to kill me." The room fell quiet. Raymond studied the boy for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Marcus always said the same thing. When the storm comes, you don't wait it out, you step into it." Denise exhaled. "If we do this, there's no going back." Elijah didn't hesitate. "I already crossed that line the moment I walked into that boardroom." Raymond smiled faintly. "Then we move." Later that night, Elijah sat alone, holding the dirty bag in his lap. He opened it and looked at the few things inside: papers, letters, memories. He wasn't a rough-looking boy anymore. He was a target. And soon the world would know his name. Across the city, Charles Whitmore stood in a private office, staring at a screen filled with legal documents and news alerts. "They're preparing a public reveal," a voice on the phone said. Charles's lips curled into a thin smile. "Good." He leaned back in his chair. "Let the world watch," he said quietly. "That just means the fall will be louder." The announcement hit the world like thunder. By morning, every major news outlet was running the same headline in different words: "Hidden heir emerges at Hawthorne Global." Screens filled with Elijah's image, some taken secretly outside the courthouse, others pulled from blurry security footage. Commentators argued, analysts speculated, strangers judged a boy they had never met. Elijah watched it all from a quiet room inside the secure building. "They're tearing him apart," Denise said, lowering the volume on the television. Raymond stood with his arms crossed. "That was always going to happen." One anchor sneered openly. "Critics question whether the alleged heir has the education, experience, or even the legitimacy to control a global company." Elijah looked down at his hands. "They still see the clothes, the bag." Denise softened. "They see what they want to see." Within hours, Hawthorne Global's stock dipped. Investors panicked. Board members released carefully worded statements claiming ongoing review and concerns about governance. And then Charles Whitmore stepped in front of a camera. He wore a dark suit and a calm smile, the kind meant to reassure. "We are sympathetic to this young man," Charles said smoothly, "but emotional stories cannot replace legal and professional standards. Until all matters are resolved, Hawthorne Global must be protected from instability." Elijah turned away from the screen. "He's positioning himself as the savior," Denise said angrily, "as if you're the threat." Raymond checked his phone. "Court scheduled an emergency hearing today." Elijah's head snapped up. "Today?" "Yes," Denise said. "Charles pushed for it. He wants to delay your confirmation indefinitely." Elijah stood. "Then we go." The courthouse buzzed with noise. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions Elijah wasn't allowed to answer. Security formed a tight barrier as he entered, his dirty bag still slung over his shoulder. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavy. Charles Whitmore sat confidently at the front, flanked by a team of high-powered lawyers. When he saw Elijah, his lips curved slightly as if this were all going according to plan. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Charles's lead attorney stood first. "Your Honor, this case concerns corporate stability. We believe the claimant is being manipulated and that the documentation presented is, at best, incomplete." Denise rose immediately. "Objection. The documentation has been verified, notarized, and supported by DNA evidence." Charles's attorney smiled thinly. "We challenge the chain of custody." Whispers spread through the courtroom. The judge turned to Denise. "Do you have additional proof?" Denise paused. For the first time since this began, uncertainty flickered across her face. Elijah felt it immediately. Charles noticed too. He leaned forward. "You see, Your Honor," he said smoothly, "emotion is clouding reason. We urge the court to appoint temporary control to the existing board." That was it, that was the move. Elijah stood before Denise could stop him. "Your Honor," he said clearly. The courtroom fell silent. The judge frowned slightly. "Young man, you are represented." "I know," Elijah said, "but my father taught me something. When people try to speak over you, it's because they're afraid of what you might say." Murmurs rippled through the room. Elijah reached into his dirty bag. Charles stiffened. Elijah pulled out a small, battered notebook. "This," Elijah said, holding it up, "is my father's." Charles laughed softly. "Anyone could claim that." Elijah opened it, then explained this. He read aloud account numbers, dates, instructions, names. Denise's eyes widened as recognition hit her. "These are contingency directives," she whispered, "unregistered, personal." Elijah turned to the judge. "My father knew people would try to erase me, so he left instructions no one else knew about, including a clause that transfers interim control to me if the board attempted a hostile freeze." The courtroom erupted. Charles shot to his feet. "That's impossible." Denise stepped forward. It's not. I recognize this handwriting. These numbers correspond to a private trust Marcus Carter never disclosed. The judge raised a hand for silence. Is this document verifiable? Denise nodded. Yes, Your Honor, immediately. Charles's face drained of color. For the first time, his confidence shattered. The judge leaned back. Then this court will not grant the injunction. Gasps filled the room. The gavel struck. Elijah exhaled slowly, his knees weak but his spine straight. Outside, the news spread like wildfire. Court rejects board's attempt to block Heir. Investors stabilized, the narrative shifted. Charles Whitmore walked out of the courthouse without speaking, his face pale, his jaw clenched. As Elijah stepped into the daylight, Denise leaned close. You just won a major battle. Elijah looked at the crowd, the cameras, the world that suddenly wanted to know his story. I know, he said quietly, but it's not over. Across the street, a man lowered his phone after snapping a photo of Elijah. He sent it to a single contact with a short message. Phase 3 failed, he's stronger than expected. A reply came almost instantly. Then we stopped playing legal games. The city changed its tone after the court ruling. People no longer laughed when Elijah's name was mentioned. They argued about him, debated him, fought over what he represented. Some called him a symbol, others called him a mistake that needed to be corrected. Elijah felt none of the noise directly. Raymond moved him again before nightfall, deeper into the network of places Marcus Carter had quietly prepared over the years. Each location was different, but the rules stayed the same: no phones left unattended, no windows uncovered at night, no names spoken casually. Power Elijah was learning came with fear attached. Denise met with lawyers around the clock, building walls of paperwork around Elijah's claim. Raymond's team rotated security in shifts, men and women who never explained where they came from or what they had done before. They treated Elijah with respect, not pity, and that mattered more to him than comfort. One evening, Raymond sat across from Elijah at a small table. You're handling this better than most grown men would, Raymond said. Elijah shrugged. I don't have a choice. Raymond studied him. Your father said something once. He said the hardest thing about being powerful isn't gaining it, it's surviving the moment everyone realizes you have it. Elijah looked up. Is that what this is? Yes, Raymond replied. They know now, and people who thrive on control don't let go easily. That truth revealed itself the next morning. Denise burst into the room, her face tight. We have a problem. Raymond stood immediately. What kind? Internal, she said. Someone leaked your location last night, not the exact address but enough. Elijah felt a chill crawl up his spine. From where? Denise shook her head. We don't know yet, but it means the circle is compromised. Raymond's jaw tightened. Then we assume no place is safe. They moved fast. Within an hour, Elijah was riding in a different vehicle, taking unfamiliar routes, watching reflections instead of roads. His dirty bag stayed on his lap like an anchor, everything real he had left. As they crossed a bridge, Elijah noticed something odd. Raymond, he said quietly, we've passed this sign already. Raymond glanced up, his eyes narrowed. Driver. The driver didn't answer. The car slowed. Raymond reached for his weapon, stopped the vehicle. Too late. The car jerked sharply to the side, tires screeching. Another vehicle cut in front of them, blocking the road. Doors flew open. Raymond shoved Elijah down. Stay low. Gunfire cracked through the air, glass shattered. The driver slumped forward, unmoving. Denise screamed as Raymond fired back, dragging Elijah toward the opposite door. They spilled out onto the pavement, chaos exploding around them. Raymond pushed Elijah behind the engine block of the car. Run when I tell you, Raymond shouted. Elijah shook his head. I'm not leaving you. Raymond looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time with something like pride. Your father would have said the same thing, he said. That's why you run. Sirens wailed in the distance. The attackers hesitated, someone shouted an order. Then suddenly the gunfire stopped. A black SUV rolled forward slowly, the window lowered. Charles Whitmore sat inside. Elijah's breath caught. Charles stepped out, straightening his jacket as if this were just another business meeting. He looked at Raymond, then at Elijah. This doesn't have to get uglier, Charles said calmly. You've proven your point. Elijah stood up despite Raymond's grip on his arm. This was you. Charles smiled faintly. I prefer to think of it as risk management. Denise shouted, you tried to kill him. Charles raised a hand. No, I tried to scare him, there's a difference. Elijah's voice was steady. You lost. Charles's smile faded. No, son, I adapted. He gestured behind him. Another man stepped forward, someone Elijah recognized instantly. A board member, one who had defended him quietly during the meeting. Elijah's heart dropped. You, he whispered. The man wouldn't meet his eyes. Charles spoke softly. Power doesn't fall overnight, it fractures, and fractures can be redirected. Police sirens grew louder. Charles took a step back. This ends one of two ways, Elijah. You disappear quietly, or you stay and learn what it costs. He got back into the SUV. The vehicles pulled away just as police flooded the bridge. Raymond stared after them, breathing hard. Denise grabbed Elijah's shoulders. Are you hurt? Elijah shook his head, but his hands were shaking now. They were inside, he said quietly, right beside me all this time. Raymond nodded grimly, which means this is bigger than we thought. Elijah looked down at his dirty bag, then back at the city skyline in the distance. My father knew, he said. Denise frowned. Knew what? That some people wouldn't stop, Elijah replied, that the fight wouldn't be about the company. Raymond watched him closely. Then what will it be about? Elijah lifted his head. About ending it. And far away, Charles Whitmore sat in the back of the moving SUV, speaking into his phone. He's starting to understand, Charles said quietly. Prepare the board. A pause. Yes, he added, all of it. The real war was about to begin. The final board meeting was scheduled for noon. Not behind closed doors, not buried in legal language, but broadcast live. That was Elijah's decision. The announcement stunned everyone. Hawthorne Global released a short statement just after sunrise, full board confirmation and ownership declaration to be held publicly. Founders Heir to address shareholders and the world. Denise stared at Elijah when the message went out. You're forcing them into the light. Yes, Elijah said, they're strongest in shadows. Raymond nodded slowly. Your father would approve. Security was tighter than ever as Elijah returned to the building where everything had begun. The same glass doors, the same polished floors, but this time there was no laughter waiting inside. Cameras lined the walls, journalists sat in designated sections, investors watched from screens across the world. Millions of people, black, white, rich, poor, were about to witness what power really looked like. Charles Whitmore was already seated at the table when Elijah entered. So were the others. Some avoided Elijah's eyes, some stared openly, measuring him. The board member who had betrayed him on the bridge kept his head down. Elijah walked to the center of the room, still holding the same dirty bag. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The meeting was called to order. Denise began with the legal confirmations, DNA, documents, trusts, court rulings. Each point landed like a nail sealing a coffin. Every attempt Charles had made to delay or distort the truth was laid bare one by one. Then it was Elijah's turn to speak. He stepped forward slowly. I know what you see, he said calmly. You see a black boy who doesn't look like power. You see clothes that don't belong in rooms like this. You see a bag you think means nothing. He lifted the bag slightly. My father taught me something, Elijah continued. He said people who mock what they don't understand usually fear what they can't control. The room was silent. Elijah turned his gaze to the board. You laughed when I walked in here, you questioned my blood, you tried to erase me legally and illegally. Charles shifted in his seat. But you forgot something, Elijah said. This company was built by a man who came from nothing, and he built it so no one like him or me would ever be locked out again. Elijah nodded toward Denise. She pressed a button. The screen behind them lit up. Financial records appeared, emails, transfer logs. Then security footage. Gasps filled the room as evidence of internal sabotage, illegal fund movements, and private messages between Charles and two board members were displayed clearly for the world to see. Denise's voice was steady. These actions constitute corporate fraud, attempted coercion, and conspiracy to undermine a lawful succession. Charles shot to his feet. This is a setup. Elijah looked at him calmly. No, this is accountability. Security moved in immediately. One by one, the implicated board members were escorted out, their faces pale, their confidence gone. The same men who had laughed at Elijah now couldn't even look at him. Charles was the last. As he passed Elijah, he stopped. You think this ends it, Charles hissed. You think owning this place makes you untouchable. Elijah met his eyes. No, I think it makes me responsible. Security pulled Charles away. The room exhaled. Denise turned to the remaining board members. By unanimous confirmation and legal authority, Elijah Carter is hereby affirmed as the sole heir, primary shareholder, and future controlling owner of Hawthorne Global Industries. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing. Elijah didn't smile. He simply nodded. Later, after the cameras shut off and the room emptied, Elijah stood alone in Marcus Carter's old office once more. The city stretched out below him just as it had on the first night. Denise entered quietly. It's done. Raymond joined them. They can't touch you now. Elijah looked down at the bag in his hands. I'm keeping this, he said. Denise smiled softly. Why? So I never forget who they saw when I walked in, Elijah replied, and who I chose to be when I walked out. Raymond placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. Your father would be proud. Elijah looked out at the city, at the millions of people who would never sit in rooms like that, but whose lives were shaped by decisions made inside them. I won't disappear, he said, and I won't become them. The legacy had changed. Not because a boy claimed power, but because he survived it.